Today we're going to solve this Fallout challenge on Ethernaut. So the goal of this challenge, I have already completed this, but if you want to create a new instance, just click on Get New Instance. This will prompt MetaMask to sign a transaction. This will deploy a new Fallout contract to the Ring-B testnet. This level is super easy. The goal is to claim ownership of the contract. So a good way would be to start off would be just to search up owner. Where do we set the owner? So we only set the owner in this Fallout function. Here in this line basically. So basically all we have to do is call this Fallout function and we'll be on the owner of this contract. The message.sender will be the owner of this contract, which will be ourselves because we're calling this function. And how did this bug came to be? So before, when Solidity had version 0.4 and any version above, so basically in Solidity 0.4.0 or any version below, we didn't have the constructor keyword available. Instead, if you want to develop a constructor, if you want your contract to have a constructor, you have to have a function that's the same name as the contract itself. That's what I have here. I have an address owner who is by default the 0 address, but I have a constructor that sets the message.sender as the owner. And this is the message.sender address. It ends in C4. So if I deploy this contract, expand, the owner will be my address because this is the constructor. The constructor ran, and now I have this address as the owner. What happens if I have a version greater than 0.4? I'll get an error saying that, hey, you cannot possibly have a function that's the same name as the contract. But how did this contract have a version greater than 0.4 where and still have a function the same name as the contract? Well, it's actually not the same name. If you look closely, this fallout function is called fall1 out instead of fallout. And that defeats the purpose of this being a constructor. This is basically a function now that you can call. But the developer of this contract thought this would be a constructor and he would be the owner of this contract because this will only run once upon deployment. But now that he created this function, anyone can call this function and become the owner of this contract, which makes this contract useless if you have some functions here that have admin privileges. So how can we exploit this contract now? We can just call this fallout function. We can do this in two ways. From the contract itself, using Etherscan, you can see the instance address here. So you can search this up on Ring-B and interact with the contract from there, or you can say contract.abi to see all the available functions. So you can see fallout is there. So to call fallout, just say contract.fallout with parentheses, of course. Say await. We don't really have to say await. This will prompt MetaMask to sign this transaction because we're changing the state of the blockchain. So the transaction finished. And now we can see who is the owner of this contract by saying contract.owner. We can say await and our address should pop up. And now if you think you finished the contract, which you did successfully, you just click on submit instance, which I don't have because I already completed the level. So what are the key takeaways for this type of attack? So what you'll need to learn from the key takeaways from this challenge are that any contract, when you are auditing contracts, any version, if any contract is below 0.4.22, I believe, you should check for constructor and if the constructor actually works. So if it has a typo in the constructor, that means this is actually a function that you can call and potentially exploit the contract. So that's the key takeaway from this challenge. Just check the version of the contract first, because depending on the contract version itself, the type of vulnerabilities the contract is prone to, and if it has version less than 0.4.22, and if it has a typo in the function that's designed to be the constructor, then that is a possible vulnerability.